Something just shifted inside LSU. And if you've been watching closely, you probably felt it before anyone said it out loud. Because this isn't just another transfer portal cycle. This feels different. Behind the scenes, Kim Mulkey is reportedly building something that people aren't fully talking about yet. But the signs are there if you know where to look. Moves that don't seem connected at first. Players entering, players leaving, roles quietly opening up. And then suddenly a pattern starts forming. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. Because this 2026 to 2027 class, it's not being built for depth. It's being built for control. Control of tempo. Control of identity. And maybe even control of the next phase of women's basketball, as it starts feeding directly into the WNBA pipeline. Now here's where it takes a turn nobody's really breaking down. Some insiders are starting to hint that this isn't just about replacing talent. It's about reshaping the entire structure of how LSU plays. Who gets the ball? Who sets the tone? Who becomes the face when the spotlight shifts again? And if that's true, then some of the names you expect to lead might not be the ones at the center when this all comes together. That's the part people are missing. Because while fans are focused on who's coming in, the real story might be about who this system is being built around, and who it's quietly moving away from. And if even half of what's being whispered is accurate, then what Kim Mulkey is putting together right now isn't just a roster. It's a reset. So before you look at this like another recruiting class, take a second, because what's happening here might change how this program looks, and who controls it, a lot sooner than people expect. And once you start looking at these moves through that lens, the decisions coming out of LSU stop feeling random, and start feeling calculated in a way that points to something much bigger taking shape. Because what Kim Mulkey is doing right now doesn't look like she's just filling gaps. It looks like she's clearing space. And that's a very different strategy. Sources around the program have quietly suggested that several of these transfer portal decisions weren't just about performance or fit in the traditional sense. They were about flexibility, about opening up positions that allow for a different kind of lineup, one that plays faster, spaces the floor differently, and shifts responsibility away from a single dominant presence to a more controlled, system-driven approach. That kind of shift doesn't happen by accident. It requires planning, timing, and a willingness to move away from what previously worked. And that's where things start getting interesting, because for a program like LSU, which has already proven it can win at the highest level, making a change like this signals that the goal isn't just to compete, it's to stay ahead of what's coming next. At the same time, the incoming class tied to this 2026 to 2027 window is being evaluated differently than most people realize. It's not just about talent rankings or highlight reels. It's about fit within a system that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. Players who can adapt quickly. Players who don't need the ball to be effective. Players who understand spacing, timing, and decision-making under pressure. Those are very specific qualities. And when you start noticing that pattern in who's being targeted, it becomes clear that this isn't about building around one star. It's about creating a structure where multiple pieces can operate at a high level without disrupting the flow. But here's where it gets more layered. Some of the current players, and even a few recent departures, are being looked at differently in hindsight. Moves that didn't make complete sense at the time are starting to align with this bigger picture. Roles that seemed secure suddenly weren't. Opportunities that were expected didn't fully materialize. And now, with more information coming into focus, those moments feel less like isolated decisions and more like steps in a longer process. That realization is what's catching people off guard. Because it suggests that this direction didn't just start recently. It's been developing quietly, with adjustments being made along the way to guide the program toward this new identity. And if that's true, then what we're seeing now is just the visible phase of something that's been in motion for a while. Meanwhile, the connection to the WNBA pipeline adds another dimension to all of this. Because the way a program develops its players, how it structures roles, how it emphasizes certain skills, directly impacts how those players transition to the next level. And there are indications that this new approach may be designed with that transition in mind. Which raises another question. Is this about winning now? Or building a model that produces a different kind of player moving forward? Right now, the answer isn't completely clear. But what is clear is that the pieces being put in place don't follow the usual pattern. And when a program starts moving like that, it usually means something bigger is coming into focus. Something that hasn't fully revealed itself yet, but is already changing how everything fits together. And as that bigger picture continues to come into focus, another layer starts revealing itself, one that has less to do with who's coming in, and more to do with who this system is quietly being designed to elevate. Because when a program shifts its structure this deliberately, it's rarely neutral. It creates opportunities for some players and limits them for others. That's where the tension begins to build. Inside LSU, there's a growing sense, subtle but noticeable, that roles are no longer as fixed as they once seemed. Players who were expected to be central pieces are now being evaluated differently, not necessarily because they've declined, but because the system around them is evolving. And when the system changes, the value of certain skill sets changes with it. That's not easy to navigate, because from the outside it still looks like the same program, same coach, same expectations. But internally, the priorities are shifting. Decision-making, pace, spacing, these are becoming the focus, and not every player thrives under that kind of adjustment. Some excel when they can dominate the ball. Others thrive in structure. And right now it looks like Mulkey is leaning toward the latter. That decision carries consequences, because once a system favors structure over individual dominance, it forces players to adapt quickly or risk falling out of alignment. And based on what's being observed, that adaptation process is already underway. Practices reportedly look different. Rotations are being tested in ways that weren't common before. Even communication on the floor has a different tone, more controlled, more deliberate. That's not a coincidence. It's a signal that the identity of the team is being redefined in real time. At the same time, the incoming class tied to this shift isn't just being evaluated on potential. It's being aligned with a very specific vision. Players who can read the game instinctively, players who move without hesitation, players who don't disrupt the flow when the ball isn't in their hands. Those are the pieces that seem to be fitting into what's being built. And when those pieces arrive, they won't just add to the roster. They'll reinforce the direction. That's when the change becomes fully visible. Because once new players enter a system that's already designed for their strengths, the impact is immediate. The pace stabilizes. The roles become clearer. The identity starts to show itself without needing to be explained. And that's when people on the outside begin to realize that what looked like scattered moves were actually part of a connected plan. But until that moment happens, there's still uncertainty, because the transition phase is where things feel uneven, where questions come up, where fans start wondering why certain decisions were made. And without full context, those questions don't always have clear answers. That's exactly where things stand right now, in between what was and what's being built. And in that space, every move feels amplified. Every decision carries more weight, because it's not just about the present, it's about whether this new direction delivers on what it's quietly promising. And if it does, then what's happening inside LSU right now won't just be seen as a shift. It'll be seen as the moment everything changed. And as that transition phase continues, the focus begins to shift towards something even more revealing: how this evolving system is going to hold up once it's tested under real pressure. Because building a structure is one thing, but proving it works when the stakes are high is something else entirely. And that's the stage LSU is quietly moving toward. What's starting to stand out is how intentional everything feels now. The rotations being experimented with, the combinations of players being placed together, even the pace at which possessions are being run, it all points to a system that's being stress-tested before it's ever fully unveiled. This isn't about waiting for the season to figure things out. It's about arriving with something already defined. That level of preparation suggests confidence, but it also raises expectations. Because once you build something this deliberately, people expect it to deliver immediately. There's no room for long adjustment periods, no patience for inconsistency. And that's where the pressure starts to build, not just on the players but on the system itself. At the same time, the conversations around the program are beginning to change. It's no longer just about talent or recruiting rankings. It's about identity, about whether this new direction can create a style of play that's not only effective, but sustainable. And more importantly, whether it can stand up against teams that are built in completely different ways. That contrast is going to matter, because when a structured system meets a team built around individual dominance, it creates a different kind of game. One where discipline is tested against creativity, where timing is challenged by unpredictability, and whichever side holds up better under pressure usually defines the outcome. That's the environment this version of LSU is preparing for. And within that preparation, certain players are starting to emerge in ways that weren't as visible before. Not necessarily as stars in the traditional sense, but as connectors. Players who keep the system functioning, who make the right decisions at the right moments, who maintain balance when the game starts to speed up. Those players don't always get the headlines, But in a system like this, they become essential. And that shift in value is what continues to separate what's being built now from what existed before. Because success won't just be measured by standout performances. It will be measured by how well the entire structure holds together when it's challenged. That's a different standard. And it's one that takes time to fully understand from the outside. Right now, people are still piecing it together. Still trying to see how all the moves connect. How the departures and arrivals fit into something that hasn't been fully revealed yet. But the closer this gets to being tested in real situations, the clearer that picture will become. Because systems don't stay hidden once they're put under pressure. They either show their strength or expose their weaknesses. And based on how carefully this has been constructed, it feels like LSU is preparing to show something that isn't just effective, but difficult to disrupt. The only question is whether it will look as controlled in real moments as it does behind closed doors. And that answer is getting closer. And as everything moves closer to that moment of real exposure, another detail starts to stand out: how quietly confident the program seems about what's coming. There's no rush to explain it. No need to publicly define the system before it's fully revealed. And that kind of restraint usually points to one thing: they already know what they've built. Because when a structure is still uncertain, you see adjustments happening openly. You hear explanations. You notice hesitation. But that's not the energy surrounding LSU right now. What's coming from inside feels controlled, measured, like every piece is already where it needs to be, even if the full picture hasn't been shown yet. And that's what makes this moment different from a typical transition. It doesn't feel like a program trying to figure itself out. It feels like a program that has already decided what it wants to be, and is now waiting for the right moment to show it. And when that moment arrives, it won't just be about wins or losses. It will be about whether this identity holds up exactly the way it was designed to. Because once it's visible, everything changes. Opponents start preparing specifically for it. Analysts begin breaking it down in detail. Strengths get tested, weaknesses get targeted, and the margin for error becomes smaller with every game. That's when the real evaluation begins, not behind closed doors, but in full view. At the same time, the players themselves will be stepping into roles that are now clearly defined by this system. There won't be room for uncertainty anymore. Each position, each responsibility, each decision on the court will reflect the structure that's been built over time. And for some, that clarity will unlock their best performance. For others, it may expose limitations that weren't as visible before. That's the reality of a shift like this. It creates precision, but it also demands it. And the more precise the system becomes, the less room there is for improvisation outside of it. That balance between structure and adaptability is what will ultimately determine how far this version of LSU can go. Because even the most controlled systems have to respond when the unexpected happens. That's where true strength is revealed. Right now, everything still exists in that space before full confirmation. The pieces are in place. The direction is clear to those inside. But the outcome hasn't been tested where it matters most. And until that happens, there will always be questions about how it translates under pressure. But one thing is becoming harder to ignore. This isn't just a roster being built. This is a program redefining how it operates, how it develops talent, and how it positions itself for what's coming next in women's basketball. And if it works the way it's being designed to, it won't just impact one season. It will shift expectations entirely. Because when a system proves it can control the game on its terms, everything around it has to adjust. And that moment, when everyone else starts reacting instead of leading, that's when you know something bigger has taken hold. And LSU looks closer to that moment than most people realize. Now this is where you come in, because everything you've just heard isn't just about one recruiting class or a few transfer moves. This is about a shift that could change how you look at LSU moving forward. So I need to know, are you seeing what's really happening here? Or do you think this is being overanalyzed? Drop your thoughts in the comments and keep it real. Do you think Kim Mulkey is building something ahead of the curve? Or is this a risky reset that could backfire once the pressure hits? Because right now, fans are split, and the conversation is only getting louder. Make sure you stay locked in and turn on notifications, because if this system unfolds the way it's being hinted at, the next update isn't just going to confirm things, it's going to change how everyone sees this program. And trust me, you don't want to catch that late after the narrative has already shifted. If you made it this far, you already know this isn't just another off-season story. This is one of those moments where the groundwork is being laid for something bigger, and the payoff could come faster than anyone expects. Stay tapped in because what happens next might not just define LSU, it might redefine the standard.